we're live. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to Tea with Mimi. This is episode 30. I am thrilled to have my wonderful friends and colleagues here tonight, very special guests, Mary Javian and Stanford Thompson, to talk about life as performers and important music educators, mentors, consultants, and activists advocating for access to the arts. And so welcome, Stan. Welcome, Mary.
Thank
Great.
you, Mimi.
Good to see you, Mimi.
Great to see you both. And as people are coming in, just want to let you know that this is live, but the links will be available on Facebook and YouTube after the show. We love hearing from you with your questions and comments, and we especially love to know what you're drinking this evening on Tea with Mimi. And the three of us were just joking about how when I first started the live stream during the first part of the COVID pandemic and lockdown period, it was usually in the afternoon, so tea was natural, but we might have graduated to some more adult beverages possibly. So Mary, what do you have tonight?
Well, I was saying that I'm a bass player with two children, so I have a beer. And it's nice to be here.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Mimi, I ran out, so I have water. Nothing exciting, but I'm heading out of town tomorrow, and I figured I didn't need to buy any more, but I was wrong.
Well, water is great. Could look like some other things. So cheers to you as well, Stanford. And yeah, let us know if you're enjoying tea or something else, folks who are watching tonight. So it is my pleasure to introduce you both, and I'm just going to give a little bit of information, then we can dive into the work and some videos and some music. Mary Javian is a double bass player who performs with the Philadelphia Orchestra, the Iris Orchestra, and other ensembles, including our Dolce Suono Ensemble. She is chair of career studies at the Curtis Institute of Music, where she has developed a curriculum she's going to tell you about. She's also on faculty of the Verbier Festival in Switzerland and an active consultant and speaker at conferences, among many other things. Stanford Thompson is the founder and executive director of Play on Philly. He is founding board chairman of El Sistema USA and the National Instrumentalist Mentoring and Advancement Network, a TED Fellow. He is on the faculty of the Global Leaders Program and a principal of Goldsmith Strategies, where he guides organizations on increasing arts access. A trumpet player, he has played in orchestras and ensembles, including Dolce Suono Ensemble. And I'll let you take it away. In fact, Stan, why don't you tell us a little bit more, especially about Play on Philly?
Sure. So, very brief. I grew up in Atlanta, and my trumpet teacher there, Christopher Martin, started his career in the Philadelphia Orchestra, and talked a lot about Curtis and a lot about Philly. And I also wanted to follow my bass playing brother, Eric, who also attended Curtis. Ended up there. Really, really great experience. And in my very last semester, learned about El Sistema in Venezuela, and started Play on Philly shortly after I graduated, not thinking it was going to, grow as much as it has over the years. But Play on Philly is an after-school music program that's focused on skill development within kids in the city who would otherwise receive a quality music education. And we have over 400 kids that we see every day after school in 5 different locations. And we've seen some really beautiful things over the past 13 years that we've been running the program that I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about.
Absolutely. And we had the pleasure of visiting Play on Philly years ago as a Dolce Suono Ensemble masterclass workshop day, along with our other dear Curtis buddy and friend, Gabriel Globus Honig Percussion. Came in and had a lot of fun with you and your students, which is amazing. So, Mary, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do, and then we'll show and tell some of the work itself.
Well, I came to Philadelphia to go to Curtis and studied bass there. And while I was there, I had this feeling It was just an intuition that music could mean a lot more to a lot more people, especially classical music, which is a term I don't usually use a lot, but I think that became important to me early on to share it with more people. And so I started going into schools with other Curtis students and was pursuing that, and actually did a lot of work at St. Francis de Sales, which is the school where Play on Philly then ended up beginning. And as I was doing that, I became really interested in connecting to other genres. I've been a curator for about 15 years. I was at World Cafe Live for 10 years. And now I'm artistic advisor in Memphis for a group that was called the Iris Orchestra, is now the Iris Collective. So I've had a lot of different interests along the way, but I think the core to them is creating more experiences that are positive, that bring people together, that bring more people to music and art that may not access it, and then also just enabling other people's creativity rather than just sort of focusing on my own, which classical music is not always the most creative endeavor. We have to find ways to broaden it, to connect it. And so it's kind of taken me in these various directions, and I'm still following multiple paths and essentially, trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. But it's been an amazing journey.
Well, I'm so in awe of what both of you do in terms of introducing music to children and building generations of players and just people who enjoy it and appreciate it, and also serving Curtis students and people who are already musicians, let's say, or going along that path, but really about finding your own path, because that's something I've always felt very much as a performer, first of all, but someone who has been aware of having, as an individual artist, to really create your own way, just because no two human beings are the same, no two musicians are the same, right? So I think certainly coming out of conservatory education, that whole narrative of how musicians find themselves has changed a lot. I think, at least as a flutist, especially with major teachers I was very lucky to study with, Julius Baker and Jeffrey Kaner, there was mostly for flute an orchestral path, or let's say a professorial path. And I chose to do a more solo and chamber and entrepreneurship path, founding Dolce Suono Ensemble. But yeah, how has it been for you, and how have you seen things changing in the way that even conservatory musicians are prepared? That could be anybody.
Well, I'll jump in about conservatory since I'm teaching at Curtis. I started teaching there. Well, Stanford and I started a program there with Joseph Conyers called the Community Artist Program back in 2011. And in 2014, I came on full time to build a department that's called Career Studies. And it's basically the application of one's artistry to society. And I think that what has become so much more focused on and to the better is that students have to do, Mimi, what you did all on your own, and Stanford, what you did all on your own. Nobody was guiding you. You had an instinct, and I felt that way too. I was just following instinct. And I don't think you can lay it out before people in a class. I think a lot of times, so I teach entrepreneurship and social practice. A lot of people conflate entrepreneurship with business skills, being able to market yourself and all of those important things. That's not actually what it is. What you two did was to see your own path and to create value, create something where there wasn't something before. And then social practice is connecting it to the community and working in intentional ways, which you've both also done. And those are the things that, although it's amazing you did it on your own, conservatories need to actually help people realize that there's 1,000 different ways to be an artist in the world and to affect positive change in society.
Yeah, and I would say from my perspective, I have worked with a lot of teaching artists over the years. We have over 30 at Play on Philly today, and past 13 years, it's been quite a number that have come through. And I think one thing that is really consistent is just how hungry so many musicians are to give back in a meaningful way and to be connected to something that is just more than themselves, or a small collection of highly trained musicians playing at a really high level in some type of performance somewhere, and to put that power in the hands of young kids, and watching them grow and develop away from their instruments as human beings in ways that is possible because of their involvement in music, is something that is very rewarding for them. So it's been a I think a eye opener for me, and one of the things I'm most proud of over these years of helping to provide these avenues for musicians that I care a lot about. Um, and many of them really have kind of a life changing experience in really a professional way that really cements that they want this type of kind of community service to be a major part of their portfolio as a musician moving forward.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so inspiring, the sense of giving back that we have experienced, right? Being part of something larger than ourselves by being musicians and then being able to share that. It's so amazing what you do. I am going to put on the intro to Play on Philly video that Stanford has shared. First, let's just say hi to some of our viewers. Thanks for being here. Hi, Victor and Steve. Welcome. Yes. Happy Handel's birthday. I was thinking that. Happy Handel's birthday to everyone. We have an eminent musicologist here, so I'm so glad that you brought that up, Steve. Rick is here, also drinking water in New Hope. Welcome. We're so glad you're glad to be here. And Bailey says hi to all of us, and she's going to watch the whole thing tomorrow. Hi, Bailey. And hello, Fred Emery. So happy to have you here too. So here is an intro video to Play on Philly, which Stanford, you can tell us about after.
Play on Philly is an organization that looks for communities that have little or no access to music education, high quality music education, and builds a community out of young musicians through the vehicle of an orchestra.
We run the program 5 days a week, 2 hours a day. We start strings instruments in the first and second grade, and then winds instrument at fourth and fifth grade. So at some point, at 7th grade and 8th grade, they should play together a Beethoven symphony, for example. I have seen people transform through the music.
It's given me a lot of patience, and it's shaped my future because it's given me bigger opportunities.
I think since I've been with Pop, I began to really believe in myself more and introduce.
Hi, we're back. You can hear me? I think it just stopped, but that was a really inspiring clips, Stanford. Tell us a little bit more, please.
Sure. So Play on Philly is inspired by the monumental music education and social development program of Venezuela called El Sistema. I think a lot of us have learned about it through one of its star graduates, Gustavo Dudamel, who went through that program. But after my time at Curtis, I was able to spend an entire year in a fellowship program developed by our friends in Venezuela and the New England Conservatory, spending a little over 2 months there, learning from the leaders on the ground and the teachers. And so in the fall of 2010, teamed up with philanthropist Carol Haas Gravano, and we co-founded Play on Philly. And, as outlined in the video, we really believe that music has a very transformational power to help young people develop the types of skills and behaviors that they need for life. And we think that's accomplished through a very intensive program where kids are matched up with an instrument, loaned that instrument, and then supported every single day after school in developing all sorts of technique and ensemble skills, and making sure that they have the ability to do that with as many barriers as possible removed. So all of the students attend tuition free, and they're expected to perform pretty much every 3 to 4 weeks, really, staying accountable for everything that they are learning and experiencing in the program. And after all of these years, we've had very impressive results, as you can imagine, especially as some of our kids that started in pre-K or kindergarten have logged 5 or 6 thousand hours of guided musical instruction. But to see, them graduate from high school, 100%, rate that we have at Pop, and to be able to go on to college or military or into the workforce with a set of skills where they know what it means to work hard at something over a long period of time has really helped all of them to become the type of people that are contributing back to society, staying engaged in positive behaviors. And some of them are becoming our next musical ambassadors as teachers. Some of them actually in Play on Philly as full-time teaching artists, and others that are building careers in music education and music therapy, music business, for example. So it's been great to see not only the program and organization evolve and grow over the years, but to see our young people also grow in very similar ways that I know we all experience on our pathway to Curtis and also through Curtis, with the kids having great experiences to perform with folks like Simon Rattle and Yannick Nazais again, and all types of world-class musicians and such. So it's been a big joy of mine over all these years.
That is just terrific. And yeah, really so meaningful when some of the students interviewed talked about how they just had increased confidence in their lives, like loving the music, but also, as you're saying, picking up those skills. And what's so interesting too, we have so much shared DNA as musicians coming out of Curtis, and also even that early organization that you two founded together. That's amazing. And then growing into the different things that you're working on today. So Mary, I'd love to share the clip you sent me from Rehearsing Philadelphia. Should I just start there, or do you want to maybe introduce that project first?
Well, maybe I'll give a brief introduction, because the video you're going to see is a portion of the project. So Rehearsing Philadelphia happened in this spring of 2022, so last spring, and it was a joint effort between Curtis and Drexel University. And the idea was, how can we be together? And the project started basically when lockdown started. And we brought in an artist from Berlin, Ari Benjamin Myers, and who created a metascore for the city, and thinking about how life is not about perfection or a final product, it's an iteration. And we had been isolated. We thought that this project that was conceived of during COVID could help bring the city back together through music and art. And so it had 4 components: solo, duet, ensemble, and orchestra. And each one brought people together in a different way. So the clip you're about to see was the final culmination, which was the public orchestra. And we had 50 musicians that were selected in an open call that represented almost every zip code in Philadelphia, and a wide variety of musical traditions. And we commissioned 5 composers, artists, including some of Philadelphia's most legendary ones, to write for this orchestra to bring people together who would never otherwise collaborate. And so this little clip shares that experience.
Wow. That's so innovative. I'm going to put it on.
It's not your standard orchestra. It's very different. We have 50 musicians from all genres. Really something that people don't expect. There's a lot of improvisation.
Classical, jazz musicians, R&B musicians, hip-hop musicians. I mean, it's like a group of people that would never normally be together.
Made up as we go along. If you got all these people that got to doing this long, it's more. This project is Rehearsing Philadelphia. This project is bringing us together along with composers who wouldn't also be normally asked to compose for an orchestra, and just throwing them all into a melting pot and see what comes out.
to me, that's very intriguing because it's like, what are we going to do?
My name is Ari Benjamin Myers. I am the artist behind Rehearsing Philadelphia. My idea was that this orchestra would be sonically diverse. We have a sitar, we have oud, percussion, all types of, from all over the world, a DJ. I mean, it's really a mix, a completely new type of orchestra.
Para mí esta es una experiencia nueva de poder participar.
This is a special opportunity because there's a lot of traditional instruments that come from a diverse cultural backgrounds, and for him it's really particularly special to be able to bring his indigenous instrument into the ensemble and to be able to participate in an ensemble that's not just relegated for Western instruments, but is more inclusive of these other cultural traditions.
Well, that's a great clip of a very, very diverse project bringing together a range of styles. So yeah, it's really so interesting just the way that, well, really both of you in your work, the work that's based in Philadelphia, have been so committed to building the arts in the community, exposure to the arts, opportunities for people to make music at different ages and stages. It's something that I really share as part of Dolce Suono Ensemble's Música en tus manos, or Music in Your Hands engagement initiative with Philadelphia's Latino community that we've been doing since 2012. And yeah, there are so many parts of the city that are underserved or that have problems in the education system beyond music. So it's really great that you're doing that. Have there been any surprises for you along the way? And that's a very open question, but one question I specifically wanted to ask you both is, did you have an interest in working with children, especially as Play on Philly, let's say, but in general, sort of early in your life? Like, when did you first want to teach kids or work with kids?
Well, I'm happy to jump in and kind of start with this. I mean, both of my parents are retired music educators. So I was around and seeing all of that stuff modeled for me. And then my 7 siblings and we all played an instrument. So there was kind of always music happening. There were always people coming in and out of the house for private lessons with my parents, that type of thing. So when I went to Curtis, I mean, it was just something I wanted to be part of. And through Mary Loisel, she got us around. I mean, any student that was interested in presenting in schools. I remember teaming up with Denise Kinney and Musicopia in town to do work with them. With Mary Javian here, we did some work together through the Philadelphia Orchestra's School Partnership Program. So I was always trying to find those types of outlets to teach and mentor young musicians. I certainly remember the tension at being at a place like Curtis with so many high-performing musicians, walking around the halls with Yuja Wong, for example, looking at my buddies like Weston Sprott that were winning big jobs in orchestras all over the place. And sometimes, while it was appreciated that there were people like myself that wanted to spend time in schools, it wasn't necessarily, celebrated as much as those that were, doing extraordinary things with music performance. But there were still plenty of people around that were encouraging. It meant a lot to me, for example, to work with Mary, who knew exactly what I was going through, wanting to find an outlet, wanting to do something slightly different. And I'm glad that I had mentors like that that helped me kind of try to find myself. And I just remember my last semester when Dr. Abreu, who founded El Sistema, won the TED Prize. And it was interesting. There was like 4 or 5 people at Curtis that all sent me the same video, not knowing that the others had sent it. But I was saying, hey, Stan, like, I came across this video. I think you would be interested in it. And, again, just having an experience like that, to have somebody sum up what I was feeling and thinking inside, and to have some supportive colleagues, that really helped to kind of push me forward and say, I think it's going to be okay to continue to venture in this area and try to give back through music education specifically.
Wow. Well, coming from tradition, it's really interesting just how strong that is in your family with music ed, and just harkening back to what we were saying about finding your own path. And before I turn it over to Mary, I mean, I guess as trumpet and double bass, you don't really have that many solo and chamber options. I have to even admit, I have more as a flutist, right? Just from the repertoire than these particular instruments. So that's always an interesting part of it too.
Yeah, and it's funny because people do ask me this question. I try to get back to where it started, and I think I've been thinking about it lately that I just did a project in Memphis with veterans, and I come from a Navy family. My father, my uncle, my grandfather, and I really actually remember my uncle, who I think I was a teenager. I think I was about 15. And I was complaining about something like 15-year-olds do, because I now have one. And saying, about being unhappy. And I think it even had to do with classical music. And he listened to a lot of classical music, really loved it. He actually encouraged me to go to Brevard, which I did around that time. But, I was complaining, there's not enough audiences. And I don't know, I was just complaining. And he said, well, Mary, life is not just about happiness. It's about being of use. And he really, I kind of got in that moment. It really did hit me that that a life of service it's a sense of purpose, right? It's important that you not just focus on your own happiness, that if in fact the more that you've been given, the more obligation you have to give. And so I think that's kind of the little nugget that started it. But I actually remember being in the DC Youth Orchestra. I went to Prince George's County Public Schools right outside of DC. I started bass in 5th grade, just in the public school system. And then I joined the DC Youth Orchestra, and like, in a way, it was very almost like El Sistema, where as soon as I got into the upper orchestra, I started coaching the lower orchestra. And I remember working with the bass players, I must have been like 13. So, and my teacher was in the military band. So there was in the DC area at that time sort of a sense of service that I think was sort of embedded in the culture that I benefited from.
Well, that's a really inspiring personal story. I mean, thank your relatives for their service, Mary. And Victor says, "Go Navy!" Yes, and yeah, my grandfathers were Army and Navy in World War II. So that's great. Yeah, and I'm having some nice hot Darjeeling right now, Victor. But thank you for the tea that you sent me. Anyway, Mary, yeah. This whole idea about giving back or passing on and feeling purpose through it is so important in what we do as music educators. But this is where I'm just hearing you both talk about the music teachers in your family or in your programs, or cultivating young teaching artists among the students in your programs, and it's so beautiful. And those are the real heroes, I think, like all the music teachers who are with kids every day in the schools. Some of our partners in Música en Tus Manos in Philadelphia, we really admire them so much. And it's really great that organizations like yours are there to support their work as well, and to really have that symbiosis, I think. Let's interrupt ourselves to have a little music. And this is actually a great walk down memory lane together. As I was saying to everybody, and hello, welcome if you're just joining. If you missed some of the talk, it will all be up on Facebook and YouTube as a video. And we have a lot of connections, the three of us, with Curtis. Of course, Mary and I were there together, Stanford a little later, but we've all gone way back together. And also our performances as part of Dolce Suono Ensemble. So I'm going to put a couple examples from that. Mary, I have some of our Schulhoff concertino that we performed with violist Roberto Diaz a few years ago. So I'm just going to share a little Schulhoff sample, and then we have something featuring Stanford. So it's not every day actually that our ensemble uses trumpet. So it's great that we have that other recording. So here is a little bit of Schulhoff concertino, the exciting last movement. And I think I have it as an audio file.
It is so funny to hear the bass on my little MacBook Air speakers.
Oh, I bet. You feel a little impressed by that experience.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
That's okay. That was really fun.
It was fun to revisit that, and we should do it again. It's very unusual to get a piece for flute, viola, and double bass, but that's the Erwin Schulhoff Concertino from a Dolce Suono Ensemble concert a few years ago with Roberto Diaz on viola. And actually, you joined us again and did some Trout. We had a really fun project, Fall for Chamber Music, at which we gave free concerts and workshops and master classes, kind of educational events that were very inclusive of artists of all ages, but for free at Philadelphia Civic Venues. It was supported by a grant by the William Penn Foundation. So it was from our concert at the Free Library of Philadelphia. And at the launch concert, we performed works from our chamber music poll. So we polled our audiences who voted on their favorite works of chamber music of all time, and Schubert's Trout was in it, was up there. And so then that's obviously time for double bass, time for Mary. And this I think was after the concert. Are you seeing that? Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's Arlen and Ricky and Amy.
Yeah, so there was definitely a whole bunch of pieces that we represented on that concert as part of the poll. So yeah, you're seeing Amy Oshiro Morales violin, Ricardo Morales clarinet. I'm obviously in the middle with my flute, Arlen Lesko cello, and then the two of us. So that was super fun. And yeah.
I see a comment in the chat, Mimi, from Mr. Rick about choirs.
Mm-hmm.
You mind if I address it real quick?
That would be great.
Mr. Rick, it's been such a hard year for choral singing, and my heart goes out to you. I do a lot of work with Voces 8. I'm on the board of the Voces 8 Foundation, and I would just encourage you to keep going. It's really been a tough few years, but I would also give a little shout out to the Digital Academy that we have and the Live from London series online if you're looking for a little bit of inspiration, because that organization does a lot of work in the community as well. So keep fighting the good fight. Just wanted to throw that in there for him.
It's a great piece of advice. And yeah, Rick does amazing work with his choirs and had me come in to do an online session, which was super fun for me because I'm always, as a flutist, working on emulating singers. So it was fun to talk to some of his choir members. And he has some groups that focus on adult musicians. So people from a very diverse group of professional backgrounds, some in music, a lot outside of music, that come together. And that's also a really special group, adult players, singers. So thank you for your lovely comments, Rick. We so appreciate it. Stanford. So our performance that I have, I'm going to share a little bit of what was just such a fun and unusual piece that we played, because Dolce Suono Ensemble as a chamber ensemble doesn't play a lot of operas. In fact, this is the only full opera that we've played. It's Giancarlo Menotti's Amal and the Night Visitors, very beloved Christmas work. We did it at a holiday time concert, as you remember, with our partners, Choral Arts Society, led by Matt Glandorf, so other Curtis friends here, and Alan Morrison on organ and directing at First Baptist. So they had such a long history of performing this every year, with a historic connection to Philadelphia Menotti through Curtis, and also as I think the first venue for Amal was First Baptist Church in Philadelphia, outside of television where it was premiered. So that was an interesting historical connection. I remember as a Curtis student playing it with them. Mary, did you do it too?
I didn't play that one. I remember playing some Benjamin Britten. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's great. So they hosted this, and Stan and I played in it. And I'm just going to share a little bit. I mean, it's all so gorgeous. We're just going to sample it a little bit, since we're together on the same performance. you. I couldn't stop it because a miracle was happening, and then a big tootie was happening, and it really is such a beautiful piece of music. So,
What year was that, Mimi?
Sorry, what? Oh,
what year was that?
That was winter 2011.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and a really fun collaboration to do. I think we're actually on camera at the bows at the end, but I just wanted to pick that little clip for now. But yeah, I have a question. Well, there's a question I'm asked a lot, and I'd love to pass it on to you. Coming from a lot of music students, let's say conservatory, university, let's say music majors who are at that juncture of, do I go into performance, and what would that look like? Orchestra, solo, maybe an ensemble, or teaching, or something else, or community work. So not so much the question of how to balance these busy lives, but how to make that decision. Like, what do you advise people who are in that stage?
Well, I would say yes. Like, you're going to do all of that. I mean, in a way, it is about balance, but you have to sort of be able to advance multiple objectives if they are what you want. I mean, I think it's really important to think about what you care about, what you're good at, and consider both musically and non-musically what that means, and then what is needed. And maybe I was an overly practical 12-year-old, but I decided to be a bass player when I was 12. I had been very focused on dance and wanted to be a professional dancer. And I hurt my knee, and I was playing bass, but, didn't fall in love with it until I heard the music that I danced to, actually. And then when I hurt my knee and I was 12, I said, well, maybe I'll switch to bass. And this is the crazy part. It was partly inspired by the fact I knew I'd have a longer career as a bass player than a dancer. So I'm not saying you need to decide when you're 12. I just think you need to really think about, those things, what you care about and what's needed in the world. If everybody is pursuing one thing and it's not what you see around you as a need, maybe there are other things that you could contribute to. So you're going to have to be able to advance multiple things at one time. So just like when you study different types of music in school, think about how you fit into those, not as the sole way, but a way to contribute.
Yeah, that's all fantastic. The only thing I want to add to it is, the importance of, developing networks, keeping your eyes open, staying in tune to what's happening in the world around you, and then also staying in tune with yourself. And for me, it just was undeniable. Again, when I saw that video about El Sistema, I just knew that I wanted to be part of that world somehow. And I wanted to play a role in trying to get something like that planted in American soil, preferably in Philadelphia. And with the networks that I had around me to share with people, hey, this is what I'm thinking. And then kind of realize, like, as I remember thinking like the whole world was going to be over. And a colleague of mine was like, Stan, like, you probably have a good 45 years ahead of you of your professional career. Just choose a couple of things now and just try it for a year or two. And then if it doesn't work, you got 43 more years. And, just keep, kind of moving and navigating, and kind of compared it to like a river, just in a way, go with the flow of some things, but try to avoid the rocks along the way. So that's just kind of my thing of, I think there's just so many opportunities out there, and there's just so much need. And to like realize us as musicians and artists, like we just play such an important role. And for some people, it's a combination of doing things as Mary was describing. And for other people, they focus in. They want to be in the Boston Symphony Orchestra. Great, go for it. Or they want to be a soloist. They want to run their own ensemble. They want to run their own organization. They want to work on various projects in various communities. And so, yeah, I just think it's all needed, and we need a lot more people to kind of step up and, take those risks and go for it.
Well, those are great pieces of advice that I'm sure will be very much appreciated by music students, music majors tuning in. And I think also what I'm getting from it, what I feel very much so, is that the more that we learn at every age, but especially if you're a kind of young musician finding your way, the more that you learn about every academic discipline and world culture and really broaden yourself, if you decide to stay on the very focused performing path, that'll only make you a more well-rounded person and have more ideas in your mind, sort of creativity, and you'll be a stronger artist for it. It's something I did actually after Curtis. I was performing full-time, but also did my master's in history at the University of Pennsylvania, stayed on for part of the PhD, let's say the exams and coursework, but not the rather big paper. I also interned at Middle East Forum, and so really got to learn a lot, and it ended up really influencing the direction of Dolce Suono Ensemble, because our curatorial vision sets the music in a broader intellectual context, and that just is very unique and satisfying for me personally. I'm always learning, but it's something I often share with students, that it's always good to be learning. In fact, I think if we're doing it right as artists, we get to learn our whole lives, which is a huge privilege. It's such a blessing, really. So that's all some of the good stuff, but very practically, a lot of people before COVID, and especially since COVID, are concerned about careers in the arts, and we're seeing it. Some of our major arts organizations are going through economic difficulties and all of that. How do you see the future of our music industry from where you sit? That's a big question, but yeah, anything you can offer would be so interesting.
Well, I was just talking to a musician today who made himself vulnerable and said, look, the work is not coming back fast enough for me, in this single way that he was doing it before. And I've actually heard that from a lot of musicians, and there is a recovery period, of course, but I think it's also to assume, or just to try to get back to what was before is not entirely possible. And so in some ways, I kind of feel like we're sleepwalking through this transition back into being together. I feel like we have to imagine things in a new way. And that was the thing I loved about the Rehearsing Philadelphia project and the clip we showed earlier about just forming a new kind of orchestra. I just went on a tour with Philadelphia Orchestra. It was beautiful and wonderful. And those groups have to exist and continue to exist. But the way in which they're changing is more subtle, right? And so I think that they need to, as institutions, explore that. But I think we also have to imagine things from scratch. I think if you really want to create something new, there is no template. And Stan said something really important about the networks and the people I mean, almost every project that I've ever done came out of a conversation with a person that I connected to and stayed connected to. And so those authentic relationships are the basis of how we move forward. But the things that we create together may look entirely new, and we need to make space for that. If we just try to rush and fill in with everything that we did before, we might miss an opportunity to start something brand new that is what's needed now. Like in Memphis, the group that I was in reached a crisis point, and we had to change the model. So we went from being the Iris Orchestra to Iris Collective. Well, now we're all over the city of Memphis, and everything is centered around our community partnerships and things that were needed when Michael Stern founded the group 22 years ago. Things are different now, and Michael's still involved, but it's a new time. And so we couldn't do things as we did before. And so again, Stan said something about being brave and trying something totally new. We all have to try to support each other with those ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I would say not to compare the Great Recession to COVID, but it was another prolonged period of time of a lot of economic uncertainty for people, especially those who supported the arts. But when I graduated from Curtis in 2009, it was still kind of fresh enough, the impacts the of the recession, that a lot of orchestras still weren't hiring a fourth trumpet player. And as they reduced and people retired, there were less and less opportunities. The only job available in the spring of 2009 for trumpet players was in the Spokane Washington Symphony at a per service rate of like, $37 per rehearsal. I can't remember what it was. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but of course not enough to move to Washington State and all of that stuff. And I remember my brass quintet, we had a lot, we had a tour to China lined up that had to be scrapped because of the economy. And it was kind of a scary time. And I do remember thinking a lot about, again, when I learned about L System, to say this is a huge, huge, huge opportunity. And I just think about these moments of, instead of waiting to revert backwards, what might we put together or new energy built? Even thinking about Mr. Rick and his challenges with the choir situation, of thinking, well, what else can we do in making, vocal music together in new and powerful ways? And, Mr. Rick is not the only person struggling with this. Maybe is this an opportunity for greater collaboration between choirs, for example, in a given geographical area? Is this an opportunity to maybe rethink the way the choir was structured, those types of things? And then, lastly, just going back to the whole networking thing, it's a really difficult thing to go in front of people and essentially say, I'm scared. I don't know what's going to happen next. Here are some of the ideas that I have. And this just might be that time where others are also looking for a different type of spark.
Yeah, well, it's definitely interesting getting from what you both were saying about, let's say, the arts. And I mean, it's unreasonable to think, I guess, that any industry doesn't evolve, stays the same. Of course, arts economy can only be a function of the economy in general, right? And I guess some of what you were saying, Mary, with the evolution of Iris Orchestra into collective, or many other arts organizations as well, there's this element of creative destruction. Both those things are part of it. An opera company that might reduce a main stage production like Opera Philadelphia, but start other types of productions that include reaching different audiences, perhaps, and new funding avenues, just not the same ones. I mean, it's all really serious stuff that we have to think about, I think, as musicians and also as organization leaders. So I'm so glad to be able to talk about these important issues with you both. And going to do a little bit more show and tell. First, just want to thank some of our viewers for their lovely comments. We also welcome your questions, comments. Jonathan, lovely comment about the Schulhof and remembers being there at the concert. Thank you so much. And Ronnie, gorgeous Amal, she remembers it well. Thanks, Mom, and our Dolce Sono Ensemble Board Chairman. Yes, that was definitely a highlight over the years of DSE. And Adrian, thank you for your comments as well. And you said, good afternoon. Where are you listening from? It's great to have you. Victor, thanks for your thanks. So we're going to put on two clips, one from Mary and, the theme of collaboration that you both talked about in terms of the way forward in classical music is kind of evident in both of your tracks that we're going to show. So Mary, while I queue up,
let me give a little bit of background about this so it makes more sense. So this is a project that one of my Curtis students, a clarinetist named Sarah Hahn, developed through this class I teach, the community artist program. And she worked with a homeless shelter in Philadelphia that at the time was called Sunday Breakfast Rescue Mission, is now called Philly House. And we worked in collaboration with guests in that facility for about 6 months during the pandemic. They were ground zero in Philadelphia for the homeless community experiencing COVID. At the beginning of the pandemic, the staff there were duct taping plastic trash bags to their bodies to try to replicate PPE, which it did not work. It's an incredible organization with dedicated staff that is literally the first line of defense for Philadelphia's most vulnerable citizens. So they really believe in the power of collaboration and the arts. And we were doing a regular class on Zoom, sharing music, talking to the guys about music. But we wanted to do a collaborative project that was had them part of the creative process. So we asked the guys to write 6-word stories based on the question, what does Philadelphia sound like? And 6-word story is just a beautiful way to encapsulate a feeling. Hemingway wrote probably maybe the most famous one, baby shoes for sale, never worn. So you're going to hear the men tell their own stories, and you're going to hear the music of Curtis, composer and friend of ours, Ted Babcock, who was a community artist fellow at the time. And then you're going to see the work of filmmaker Eamon Kelly, who matched the visuals to go with the men's stories. And then you'll hear Sarah and 2 other Curtis students, Zach Chong and community arts fellow Justin Goldsmith playing cello. And it's 9 minutes long, so we can't watch the whole thing, but let's just watch a little bit. Thank you for sharing it.
Oh, my pleasure. We'll get a sense of it, at least.
You are ready.
Which one am I going from?
Whichever ones you want to share would be phenomenal.
The rain comes. It washes away my pain and sorrow. Rivers of rain. It cleanses my body, my mind.
Jackhammers.
Refreshed.
Birds singing.
I am
buses,
whole. Together
but
people
apart.
I love my
Live
doorbell
ring,
ring.
horns blaring,
The
so
doorbell
so
ring
happy.
helps me always have a secret. The rain comes. It washes away my pain and sorrow. It cleanses my body, my mind. Refreshed anew, clean and serene. I am whole, fulfilled, and complete.
No good place to stop that. And I personally can't stop a clarinet solo. But that said, that was, very fascinating and just such an example of the collaboration of different art forms and community groups, Mary. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
And, it really connects with the other example we have from you, Stanford, if you want to intro the Frere Jacques, and then we could just talk about everything's group after. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, these kids I'm so proud of. They just started playing in like September. So wanted to show, sure, after all of these years, there's some very, very impressive kids. But this really gives a sense of that whole learning their instrument, learning to play with one another. So we can play a little bit of that. Thanks, Mimi.
Okay, thank you. Wow, that is so heartwarming. And sorry for the little hiccup. I wanted to also scan forward to the part where the largest group of students was singing, and not only singing and playing, but singing in French. So big bravo to Play on Philly and UStanford on that performance.
Yeah. No, I always joke that they play better as an ensemble than the Curtis Symphony sometimes. But no, but it's just, as you can clearly see, the very, very beginning of those seeds that they can build on now. So
absolutely. And as our listener Stephen Fisher just commented, little kids playing Mahler 1 ! Absolutely. So you really did the fusion of the Faragaka and the Mahler together. So what an experience for them.
Yeah, we'll have the symbols later and the
Oh, you have to start somewhere. Absolutely. Yes. And Sonia, thanks for your lovely comment as well. You're welcome to put comments, questions even later on when this stays live, everybody. But yeah, it's been so interesting hearing a little bit more, and especially since we all have worked together over the years and often just hang out in person. I mean, Mary, I just bumped into you at the Prism Saxophone Quartet concert a few weeks ago. It was great. So it's nice to have this virtual, more in-depth time, and I am so appreciative that you both joined me and talked about your fantastic work, talked about some of these big questions, right, about where we are with music and communities and the future.
Thank you so much for having us, Mimi. It's really been delightful to talk to you guys about it.
Thank you. Yeah. And yeah, we'll have to do some more music all together soon as well. And I just want to invite everybody to follow, subscribe, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube, and also to stay tuned. Dolce Suono Ensemble will be giving 3 concerts in Philadelphia in March, April, and May. But we're offering them hybrid. So you can come in person, and you can also subscribe or get a virtual ticket from anywhere in the world. We were talking about things that have emerged and stayed with us since the COVID pandemic. And that's one of them, all the different virtual ways that we're connecting, like tonight, and with audiences through hybrid concerts. So anyway, I hope you all join us, and obviously follow Mary and Stanford's work, and really just keep in touch. So thanks again, guys. It was so much fun to see you. And thanks everybody for listening. Have a wonderful evening or morning or afternoon, wherever you are.
Thanks, Mimi. Thanks, Mary.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.